Buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches, donde quieras que estéis. Hoy tenemos un episodio muy especial porque vamos a entrevistar al grupo FPVDronesUa o UA, que es un pequeño grupo que está naciendo para apoyar a su país mediante drones en sus esfuerzos de defensa contra el invasor ruso. So, welcome Oleh and Eugene to Por Tierra, Mar y Aire podcast. This is your home, and I want you to explain to our audience a lot of things about all the efforts you are committing in order to protect and to defend your country. So let's start with the beginning. What do you want to talk about yourselves?
We want to tell people how important is war in Ukraine right now, because as you said earlier to us in private, this is the war of whole Europe, and if we stop fighting, there's pretty big chance that Europe could get involved and could suffer from the war consequences. We also wanted to tell how important the drones are in the current warfare and what are the counters for them.
Perfect. So let's begin with the start. How did your initiative started? Or start, sorry.
It was, I don't remember, it was in late evening, and we were sitting and thinking about how we can help our army, because the situation in the front lines were rough, and we thought that we have some knowledge that we can use that can be helpful to the army. That's why we decided that we should build drones, because the drones are, in my opinion, is the most effective way to destroy enemy troops, equipment, anything, because they are precise and they are cheap. So the main parameter for the our drone, let's get back a bit. We decided to build a drone. For first, we thought that this would be a fixed wing GPS bomber without a live camera and something like that, but we shortly realized that this is not going to work, because GPS is easily jumped and stuff like that. And after that, we saw videos with FPV usage in the war in Ukraine, and we decided that it would be really nice if we can make them. I've contacted the Eugene. He said that they're pretty easy to make. He knows how to make them because he used to fly them and made them as a hobby. And we decided to build FPVs.
Okay. Which kind of FPV quads, more precisely? Like 5 inches, 7 inches, 10 inches, or what?
We build 7-inch and 9-inch.
Okay.
So we want to start building 9-inch. We just ordered parts for 9-inch, but those drones we delivered, they were 7-inch.
Okay. So I would like you to describe your roles in this initiative, from obtaining, etc.
So my role is communicating, finding sponsors. I'm also responsible for social medias and stuff like that, while Eugene and one more member of our team, he's also Oleh, they are pretty much the main engineers behind this. I also understand how the drones work in general, but I lack the depth knowledge the guys have. So that's it.
Okay. Now let's talk with the more knowledgeable people, with other FPV drones. Let's say that you want to explain to, for instance, Spanish FPV pilots and makers how your drones are different from the drones that they are usually used here.
Yeah, I guess the main difference with the hobbies like FPV drones is that they are mostly the either freestyle drones for
Mhm.
like making different videos and nice flybys, or like long range drones or fixed wings for flying high, flying low, and just taking fun of your hobby. While
Absolutely.
the drones we are making are basically uh, going in two main directions: is to increase the range they can be used in and increase the payloads they can carry. So yes, it's the two main aspects that define what's the parts we're using and so on.
And for instance, what about the radios? Are you maintaining an analog video radio, or are you transitioning to digital?
We're using for video. We are using analog because well, it is much cheaper than the digital video, and also the not only the transmitting unit but also the receiving goggles and all of the equipment is much cheaper, and therefore it's a reliable option for kamikaze drones and the DIY drones as it is.
But what about the range of those VTX transmitter and receivers?
Well, Uh, there's quite a lot of theory and in what the range is, but theoretically, as long as you're flying high and your antennas are looking in the perfectly right spot, you can fly as long as 50 on 150 kilometers. But it's very theoretical values. The more realistic is probably from 5 to 15 kilometers if we're talking about of um, let's say average maneuverability without adjusting the antenna's direction.
Okay. And what about the other radio, the control radio? Are you do you prefer any kind of specific protocol, the new ones or the older ones?
We're preferring the new ones more because they're not so used, and they're not so easy to be counteracted with electronic warfare and jammers.
Hmm.
So the radius, because the radius that are used in, for example, the DJI Mavics or other custom drones with 2.4, 5.8 gigahertz are mostly very easily jammed because this is like the 70% of the market, the drone market is using these frequencies. While we try to get off it.
So, okay, I think that you are using, for instance, sometimes Crossfire, right, or another one, or
Uh,
ILRS.
yeah, yeah. So the EL Express LRS and yeah.
And what about the batteries? Are you experimenting with lithium ion, or are you using lithium polymer, or what?
Yeah, that's a good question because the lithium polymer is mostly used by hobbyist FPV as well because they give the high discharge current,
Hmm.
but they actually have less capacity per weight.
Hmm.
Meaning the lithium ion are actually more effective in this area. So we try to utilize them by using the best options for the current they can provide and the capacity they can give at the same time. So, and this actually limits how the drones are being flown by pilots because, well, these batteries require quite some skill to not drop your drone because of overcurrent or something else.
Oh, could you develop it a little bit more? This is very, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean the lithium ion batteries are having well they can provide less currents than the lithium polymer can.
Mhm.
But despite that, they can actually have a bigger capacity for the same size and weight. So the idea of the flight style which the pilot should utilize is to not flying fast, but finding a perfect spot with the maximum efficiency where the drone can lift as much as possible for as long as possible to maximize the range. So,
Oh, I see. Uh, sorry. How did you learn that? By your previous trade or experiences, or receiving feedback from the front line?
well, it was mostly from the experiences and from the internet about well, the general knowledge about batteries and so on, YouTube videos and so on. So, well, we we planned this from the start, just from the internet, but as further, we also will confirm this data we were planning through the actual test flights we did.
Um, are you receiving any kind of feedback from the pilots of the front line, or what?
Yeah, we're receiving the feedback. We have the signal group where we communicate with each other, and they tell us their current needs and stuff like that. But I mean, they just tested those drones. They haven't used them in combat, and we received very valuable feedback, and we're gonna listen to him to that feedback. I mean.
Yeah, because you have to learn in order to
Yeah.
offer them the best FPV drones possible, right?
Yep. We want to order them the best FPVs possible, and we are super open to learning new stuff. And I think learning is the most valuable. I mean, knowledge is the most valuable thing we can obtain from all of this, except our liberated land, so we can later transfer this knowledge into some other projects.
That is really interesting. Are you receiving support from other groups or the Ministry of Digital Transformation, or?
We haven't contacted the government directly because I think we're just too small for them to notice us, but we're receiving a lot of help from the people from all over Europe and the United States and other parts of our beautiful Earth. And we are super grateful for them, because if not them, this all wouldn't be possible. They're just amazing. And that was one of the most shocking, or I don't know how to say it. I was shocked that people who I barely knew, who I changed a couple of texts, that they are ready to donate to us so we can build those drones, and those drones can help us liberate our lands. That's something I can't understand even now. That's really amazing.
Because I think that every drone at the front line counts. At the Ukrainian armed forces need drones by the dozens of thousands, right?
Yep, I've recently read an article that says that each unit, I mean, strike UAV unit, we have some structural reforms lately that restructured our army a bit, and we have strike UAV units right now, and they operate different kind of UAVs, and they operate FPVs too. So this article says that based on their calculation, the current need is 40 FPVs a day for each unit, and we have a lot of these units. So
Wow.
yeah.
I see. So, as I said, every drone counts.
Yeah, every drone counts, and that's why we're also making FPV drops, so the drones can be more reusable, but I guess we'll talk about this a bit later.
Okay. So, I didn't ask you about how many months or whatever are you involved in this initiative?
Let's say we are involved with this initiative for 3 months already, but
Mhm.
we wasted a lot of time on just simply waiting for parts to arrive before we can start assembling the drones and testing them.
Yeah, so we actually started thinking of this, well, actively looking for a solution of this in this February this year. And then we gathered the first donations from our local friends and groups for the first drone, and then we had to wait for the parts to arrive, and so since only then the actual tests and the development started. So yeah,
because I think I suspect that there are a lot of stock brokings, right? A lot of times Chinese shops are suffering. I don't know. I don't remember the name. Something like they don't have any more parts.
We haven't encountered such issue yet with the Chinese
Okay.
Chinese sellers, but there is some other obstacles, like if your delivery gets stuck in a local post service and stuff like that. I mean, Ukraine has a great private post company, but we don't choose which post company will deliver parts to us from Europe where they pick it up. So if it's Nova Poshta, then we're good. If it's Ukrposhta, then we're fucked.
I see. So what would be then the solution for that problem?
Just ordering more parts so they will arrive. But I mean,
yeah, it's more of just getting a consistent flow of parts. So we won't really wait for anything particular to arrive, because we will continuously receive the new stuff.
So like we built one drone, and the next day we received the parts for the next drone. We build the next drone, we received the part for the next drone, and etc.
I see. So tell me about your plans. What else do you want to do in order to help your country?
I mean, we'd like to progress as much as possible in the field of FPVs, and I guess when we reach the limit that commercial parts can provide to us, then we should switch to something more serious. Ideally, it would be creating something like a good 14 kilometers plus kamikaze drone, but we're super far from this, yes, but we're moving into this direction slowly, but moving. Yeah.
What would be the main obstacles in order to achieve that success?
Oh, can't say from like straight what the main obstacle would be. I guess we will encounter many obstacles in our way, in our path, and many of them would be bureaucratic ones, because in order to obtain dual-use goods, you need to create some stuff of organization, etc., obtain licenses, and so on. And probably the testing part. That would be the hardest point. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me tell you something. To achieve a practical 15 kilometers range is quite a thing. It's not so easy at all using analog VTX, right?
Yep.
You need power amplifiers or any sort and a very sensible directional antennas. Do you need anything else, or that would be the formula?
Well, it's more of a theoretical stuff going on here, so I can't really say from the start. But yes, that's the base of it. Well, it's the base of any radio receiving hardware. So the antennas and the receivers, how sensitive they are, what's the amplifications they can gain, and well, of course, the VTX's power. Because these are also quite limited currently. So yeah, but probably most of these things can be counteracted by placing the antennas properly on an elevation and flying higher, so having a more consistent field of view without obstacles. Which, yeah.
I see. What advices would you give to another young people who wanted to help this or to start this kind of efforts in Ukraine?
I don't know. I don't even know. I think they have to come the path we've already come to in order to gain experience, so they can understand what's better for them. I think this experience may vary for people. Like, there is nothing really hard in buying parts and building them, but some units may have different needs. And we know the needs of our unit. That's why we adjust our drones to their needs. Something like that.
I see. Okay, I also would like you to explain to my audience. Let me.
I have one more word to say. Sorry for.
Sorry. Excuse me.
They should pay more attention to tests and do more tests. Tests is everything.
Test is everything. Could you elaborate it a little bit more, please, with examples, for instance?
I mean, we just have lost our first drone, and we did not know why we lost it, but pretty sure we realized that was a pilot's mistake, and fortunately we managed to find this drone. Yeah, so
the next day.
Yeah, the next day.
It laid in a field for a day, but but we found it. So it's a trail of mistakes and solutions. So testing is the thing. You can never trust the theoretical values you get from while developing. You should always test them and be prepared to what can happen. So the militaries were sending this to always know what they can expect from the stuff we are building.
Yep. So the main purpose for everyone should be that your drone should work off the shelf without worries that it could fail, because it can cost people's lives. So
absolutely.
So the solution should be ready, and the operator is already putting himself to the risk because from the place where he launches the drone, he can easily be hit by anything from mines to artillery to even drop grenades. So yeah, just to make sure it works and it works correctly.
Absolutely. There is nothing like a hobby or toys or jokes here involved. It is deathly serious.
Yeah.
And I would like you to explain to my audience in a more general sense what is this war about. And excuse me for the question, because it is very important. After, say, 16 months, a little bit more than that, people in the rest of Europe, I think that some of them feel less and less involved in the war because they are getting used to it. I would like you to explain why this is important. I know that, but I would like you to explain it to the audience.
Yeah, so this war is all about fighting imperialism and respecting international law, because the Russia set a precedent because they violated the international law and invaded foreign country, and they did it in 2014, but world did not pay enough attention to that situation, and that's why we have a full-scale invasion right now. So yeah, they're trying to kill us all by no other means. I'm not exaggerating, I guess, because, for example, recently one of their strikes killed my group mate. It was the missile strike on the city. They hit the residential building in the middle of the city. There was no military objects, anything. They just don't care about what to strike. They strike because they can, because they have rockets. They're like, okay, there's water facility, we're gonna strike it. No matter where this water is used for or stuff like that, they're just gonna strike it. I feel like that's fighting evil. The Russia is the pure evil because they've always terrorized the neighboring countries. For example, Chechnya, Georgia. I'm not even saying about the horrible stuff they did in Syria with carpet bombings of Aleppo and stuff like that. That's super horrible. And we are very lucky that we are in the middle of the Europe. We are located in the middle of the Europe, and we have a strong military that can fight back. And we are backed by no means the whole world, I guess, the whole free world. Yeah, the whole free world. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. If they had the possibility, they'd bomb out everything they could if they faced any resistance. And they will face the resistance, and they are facing it right now, and we're seeing how they handling this resistance. So they just leveling the cities.
So every Ukrainian is doing whatever he or she can in order to help the country in your existential fight, right?
I wouldn't say every, because there are a lot of ignorant people everywhere. I mean, there are some percent of ignorant people who don't care about anything, and sadly we have those kind of people in Ukraine. I don't really understand what are their intents, but I think the time hasn't come for them to understand, but it will eventually come, even though it's a little bit too late.
Okay, I see. So how can my audience help you? What do you need from the people here in the southern west part of Europe?
I think, first of all, they can help by spreading the information about war in Ukraine, about horrible war crimes that Russia is committing, and opening the eyes of Russia's apologists and other kind of people who still think that Russia is good, that Russia is fighting imperialist West and some other lunatic stuff like that. That's the first way how can help us. Second way is they can follow us on Twitter, for example, and if they want, and if they feel that we're doing a good job, they can donate to us through PayPal or BMC or crypto.
Yeah, let me just in a second, let me show your Twitter account. Do you have any more social media accounts, or this is the personal one?
No other social media accounts, but we may set up some in the future.
Just a second.
Main platform right now.
So this is it, right?
Yep.
FPVDronesUa.
That's it.
So how can they deliver you either money donations or parts or whatever?
For example, if they want to deliver parts to us, they can check our link tree. I have left my Signal here so that they can contact me, Signal, Telegram, or they can just DM us on Twitter, and we'll answer them with the credentials they should send the parcel.
Perfect.
And if they want to help us with money, they can donate to our PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee platform, which is listed in a link tree.
And during these 3 months, you explained before that a lot of people has helped you already. Could you explain a little bit more in order to help people to understand it?
Yep. So I was following the war mostly through Async accounts in Twitter. For those who don't know, Async is open source intelligence, and I found a pretty interesting account called DevMon on Twitter. I thought he makes good analytics out of information he has, and I decided to join his Discord. I joined his Discord community. We just it's a international Discord community. There are people from all parts of the world, and so yeah. At first it was like just to follow the war better. So I I don't know. I was just interested in following the war because I don't know how can people be ignorant when the war is right outside of your window. And then we just had a couple of conversations, and I saw that these people are willing to help us, and they are already helping us, and they are willing to help us not only on words but with money. And there is some guy nicknamed Shiv on Discord. He was one of our first donators among the Western audience. He donated the money for the FPV drone so we can buy the parts for it. We bought the parts, filmed a couple of good shots, made photos, posted it, and it somehow went viral. And now people from all over the world are helping us. And Shiv has also bought, not bought, he has paid for parts for the Octocopter drone we're building right now with
Oh, wow.
thermal capabilities. Yeah, so he is a really good man.
Would you like to explain a little bit more about that octocopter with a thermal camera, or not?
Yeah, I'll leave it to the Eugene.
Yeah. Well, so the idea of it's actually a hexacopter, not an octo yet.
Oh yeah.
Yes, so it's 6 motors. It's slightly bigger than the regular 7-inch we did. Let's say it's 3 times. But anyway, the idea is that it's much bigger. It has bigger propellers, and the payload it can carry is much bigger as well. But the main problem with this kind of copters is that they are big and quite loud, and especially their black carbon fiber frame is very easily noticeable in the sky. So that's why using thermals on such a drone is a solution. So you basically need to fly it in the night while nobody sees it, while the thermals allow to see the vehicles and infantry on the ground to successfully attack them with a bigger presence from the sky.
I
Bigger
see.
things.
So, what would be its use? It would be used for getting intelligence, surveillance, or transporting a payload, or what?
It will be used to transporting a payload and delivering it right to the target, but theoretically it also can be used for surveillance, but I think using such big and loud drone for surveillance makes little sense. That's why its main purpose would be just bombing targets.
Okay, I see. So, have you coordinated yourself with other groups already, or not?
We have contacted a lot of other FPV developers. We have established very important contacts, and we are exchanging information with them. For example, right now we are chatting with one FPV developer that is making homemade carbon frames. So we can instead start buying Ukrainian-made carbon frames. If they are good, then buying Chinese one. They should be cheaper, and if they're good, why not support Ukrainian product? Yeah, and we're also received very valuable feedback from other FPV drone producers. Those guys produce 300 FPVs a month, I guess. They're doing a great job, and they're not even crowdfunding for those drones. They are sponsoring it from their own pockets. So this is completely Yep.
I have heard that nowadays in Ukraine, some companies are even developing their own quad motors. Is that right?
Yeah, I also heard that, but I have no such contacts, but I've heard that information yet. And I guess if those motors are good, we'll eventually switch to them. Because the less Chinese parts we have, the less we dependent on them, the better for us.
And what about the electronics, mainly the flight controller? Do you know any plan or Ukrainian company that is going to offer it? Because I think that this is the one of the main, if not the main, bottleneck, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, interestingly, I'd say that a flight controller can be even easier made locally than a motor, because motor requires quite some machining on the handwork, while the electronics and especially the firmwares we are using are all open source. And all we need to do is actually do a custom PCBs, ordering some parts and soldering them together. So it's not even a problem of it's also totally possible, but we didn't really see anyone doing this yet.
Yeah. By the way, after you mention it, what kind of open source firmware do you use? Betaflight or INAF or what?
Yeah, we're mostly using Betaflight because I'm used to it and I know how to configure it. But we're also looking into different firmwares for the other applications where the navigation is more of a thing than in Betaflight, because Betaflight is mostly for racing, for freestyle, which is a kamikaze drone style. So yeah.
So you are evolving right now.
Yeah. I guess it would be good if we'll be always evolving.
Absolutely, because the other guys are evolving too, right?
Yep, the Russians are evolving too, sadly.
I have accumulated the impression that the Russians have learned from the Ukrainians how to FPV. Is that right?
Yep, I'd say that this is right. I mean, eventually they'd learn it by themselves, but because we showed them how effective they are, that's like was no brain deal for them. Just go for it and that's it. I mean, that's expected part, because they did the same thing with Mavics and even other combat tactics we applied, for example, like mobile ATGM groups and stuff like that. They're also copycated it. So that's expected, and that's why we should always be one step ahead of them and think about possible counters to them and how they can counter us, so we can counter their counter.
So your brains and your creativity are your rifles.
Yep,
Main
very
weapons.
much like it.
Please tell me if I am wrong. I think that the main difference still today is that Ukrainian, both state and armed forces, are more flexible, are more prone and ready to accept the kind of innovation that you are implemented right now, compared with the Russians that are much more verticals in their way of doing things, right?
Yep, exactly. I think that's mostly because we have actually everyone fighting, from a medic to a programmer, from a school teacher to I don't know, barista or a cashier. So that's like the holy war. We're fighting the holy war, while this war for Russians is just another invasion. And while they're declared the martial law, or no, they haven't declared martial law yet, but they have declared the mobilization. But still, they are very dependent on the prisoners and other stuff of people who they just throw into a meat grinder. And we don't have such manpower capabilities, and we value human lives above everything else, because as we can say from our experience and from everything, even the most advanced piece of tech still requires a good personnel to operate it. Good. It requires soldiers to have a good training, etc. So that's why we should focus on how to fight this war and prevent casualties as much as we can.
That is really something, because a lot of people here, I would say that they don't know how much you care about the human lives of the Ukrainian people. I think even that they don't connect enough with the human aspect of the war, because to say that you have an existential war, it is not immediate for some people to understand that you are protecting your friends, family, parents, etc. So it's a war about your country and it's a war about your people. Yeah.
So Russia just showed that they don't care who are you. Either you are military or civilians, or they just came to kill here, and they have a lot of manpower resources, as I said before, and as a wise man once said, a little Soviet army can't win a big Soviet army. That's why we should adapt our tactics. We should start valuing our people more. And I mean, every additional value to any equipment comes from a crew skill. And the more experience crew has, the more skilled it is. Even the so yeah, let's just leave it like this. Yes.
How would you explain to our Western military forces and security personnel, like police, for instance, how important are drones? How will you explain it to them?
Well, drones are basically lifesavers because I mean, when you don't have an equipment to fight, you usually start fight with people. So you start assigning them some dump tasks, for example, recon tasks and stuff like that. But when you have a $3,000 DJI Mavic 3, you can just lift it up and see what is going on. I mean, further than 10 kilometers from the front lines. So that's how they change the world. They provide reconnaissance, they provide the situational awareness. The commanders are looking live stream from drones. That's why they have a better situational awareness and have a much faster reaction time. Also, those drones can stop assaults, for example, as we've seen many times before. Even simple Mavic 3 can carry 2 grenades, and he can drop them. And if the operator is lucky enough and skilled enough, he can easily stop the assault just by wounding some of the assaulting troops and not having, not putting this into infantry's shoulders, because the infantry is the one who experience the most dire things that happen at wars. Because I mean, if they're just going through hell, through constant shelling, mines, and so on and so on, so we just have to make their life as easy as it possible. I mean, it still be hard, very hard, living in the front lines, even though if you have full superiority and stuff like that. But we don't have disposable people like Russians do, so we should just value them.
That sounds really horrible, disposable people, right?
I mean, that sounds horrible, but that's how reality is.
Absolutely.
If they don't value their people's lives, how would they value other people's lives?
That's it. And what would be your advice in order to an armed and Western armed force in order to defend themselves against drones? What would you tell them about it?
Make EV, make nets. Nets are very helpful, and masking and camouflaging. I mean, that's pretty much basic stuff, but you should just learn how to improve all of those aspects I listed, and that's pretty much it. For example, if you take like examples from the current war, I'd say that nets aren't that useful as the camouflaging is. People should realize that you should not camouflage it from the direct view, rather from the indirect view, so people can't spot you from the drone and stuff like that, because most of the surveillance done by drones, not by people, or for example, ground-placed cameras, is still done by drones. So you should just, understand how your, for example, self-propelled howitzer would look like from a top. So would it be easily noticeable or not? And but nets are also important. I think as anything, these rules work in combination. You should combine all three sets of those rules. So you should put nets, because sometimes they can help, sometimes they can't. But if they, for example, help you 5 times out of 100, I mean, it's still profitable, because they're basically, not free, but very cheap. And EV, you should just make a lot of EV and
electronic warfare, right?
Yep, electronic warfare. And more importantly, you should tell your units how to communicate with your electronic warfare units, so they don't lose their own drones. And
oh, wow.
You should have yep. So I'm a bit stuck. Sorry. I'll leave it to Eugene to continue if he can.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
no worries. Yeah.
Let's say regarding the nets, as Oleg says, it's sometimes it helps, sometimes it won't help, but mostly what it does is the nets not only mask the stuff you're covering with it, it will also catch the possible drones that will try to hit it. If the Russians are using kamikaze drones, the drones are getting stuck because mostly they are just attaching a contact detonator which want to blow up if it won't be hit. So they're useful, but the electronic warfare is probably more profitable, because if you have enough of it, you can basically turn your position into a drone fence, or a position which a drone can't really fly through, because it will lose signal, it will lose video or whatever, and will simply drop or go away. So, which is really important.
Also, I want to note that you guys should focus on a thing called trench EV. So this is like really, small EV systems compared to other big EV systems, because this war has shown us that the transported EV, that's placed on vehicles, for example, like a Zhitel or stuff like that, they are considered high-value targets, and therefore everyone looks for them. And that's why it's, just imagine the situation where, for example, a Leica UAV operator flies, it raises the drone, it flew 10 kilometers behind the enemy front lines, and he sees some box. Box and box. He'll just skip it. But when he sees this same box on a KAMAZ truck, pitched with the antennas, he'll instantly understand that this is an EV system. So the EV should be transportable, but it should have an ability to dismount it from the truck and place it somewhere. And as for the French EV, these things are small, and you can spot them with the drone, but if the crew is, not the crew, but the personnel on the ground who operates this EV, if they are skilled and aware enough of how the system works, that it is really easy to mask them and camouflage them from the enemy, so they won't see it. And they just have the radio signature that something is here, but they won't see the point exact where it is. And big EV is easily destroyed, while small EV is saving lives.
That is really, really something. That's a really neat idea, a very important concept, because, as you say, a very distinctive and big EV system is going to be the highest valuable target possible.
Yep. They're on the same level of value as, for example, air defense systems or
Absolutely.
even MLRS, because they prevent you from acquiring the targets, and not even acquiring the targets. And for example, Russian EV can jam HIMARS rockets and JDAMs.
Sorry, jamming HIMARS rockets and JDAMs?
Yep, they can jam the JDAMs and HIMARS rockets and Excaliburs. So this affects their preciseness and accuracy.
Okay, so you need to target them as soon and as much as possible.
Yeah.
How would you transmit the idea of urgency of the threat of the small drones to the politician, to the decision makers here in the West?
I'd say if they are not yet convinced, they won't be convinced further. But as I see now, our politicians are paying a huge focus to the drones. You won't see it from the Ministry of Defense directly, because I think he's afraid to say such things publicly, because he is afraid of China's reaction to this, and that they can halt the supplies. But we have a lot of government initiatives, for example, Army of Drones.
Yeah.
Mikhailo Fedorov, he's doing a really great job.
Absolutely.
And they're doing the right thing. And those guys know what they're doing.
Oleg or Eugene, do you mind to explain to us a little bit more, to elaborate about the work of Fedorov, please? I admire really that guy.
I can, but I don't really into it that much. I just know that he's a very young and prominent figure, and the young people are always a drive of innovation. And he's the main innovator in among our ministers right now. For example, the DAP, the governmental service that provides you with identification, and you can open a business here and stuff like that, and all of this can be done by 3 clicks through your phone. That was the idea of his idea and his team's idea. And with the Army of Drones, as I understood, they are actually giving grants to people. For example, they've held a conference in Kiev a few days ago about countering the air threat and how drones can be used to counter Shahids. And they've actually awarded the 3 grants, each worth of 2 million, to people who showed what they have, and they will start their production. And I hope it will help us to protect our skies from Shahids, because they have a
Yeah.
very fine sound and they are deadly.
I want to use all your knowledge, because we want mainly here to talk about FP drones UA, but you are so knowledgeable about these topics that I cannot resist. Could you explain the threat of the Shahid or Geran, or whatever you want to name it, to
Okay.
Ukraine?
Yep. So Shahids are a very big threat to us, because first of all, they want us to waste anti-air missiles. They want us to fire anti-air missiles to Shahids, and that's why, so they can exhaust our air defense, so they can later fly their planes and drop those UMPK. I mean, that's semi-guided bomb. Basically 500 kilograms fragmentation warhead from the planes that they're dropping. I mean, they're using this terror tactics already in the frontline regions. For example, Kherson or Sum, they suffer from these bombs. They launch like from 6 to 12 of them daily, and while they don't have that much of military effect rather than just terrorizing the civilians, because I mean, they are not accurate at all. I mean, those bombs, so they often miss. For example, as we've even seen in Belgorod, where these two bombs from their planes fell. So yeah, the main task for the Shahids, I guess, is to deplete our AD stocks, and so they can later overcome it with the cruise missiles. And we should adapt the strategy by actually finding a cheaper ways to intercept them. For example, the mobile groups on pickup trucks have proven themselves to be very much effective, because you just place two machine guns and a thermal scope, and if the Shahid comes to your line of sight, this Shahid is basically not going to have a good time. Let's just say it like this. And I think drones are also could be used for this task, because I mean, countering the drone with a drone, what could be cooler? And yeah, so the main threat from Shahids is, I'd say, not Shahids itself, but rather that they'll eventually deplete our AD stocks, and so they will be able to fly their planes more freely into our airspace and launch their bombs. So like they did in Syria, but this time they have the guided bombs, but they're imprecise.
I see. So, would you want to explain anything else to our audience?
I mean,
I'd say the interesting part about the Shahid drones is that they are hard to counteract the regular way which we are used to counteract the drones with, because these are not the drones that somebody is controlling with a lifetime, life, and so they are basically given a GPS coordinate or GPS path that they have been following. So we can just simply jam their control, so they fall out of the sky or something. And the problem with their GPS is that they are also protected from the GPS spoofing and GPS jamming. They have special equipment on board, which is military grade and is suitable of counteracting these effects of the jammers. So you can actually counteract them, but you would probably need a few electronic warfare systems in a few different locations around it to successfully spoof its position or something. Yeah, so the only thing we are left to do is actively shooting them down, and also we first need to find them as well. So
Yeah.
the interesting thing that they're actually so mostly flown in the night because they're also big, and even though they fly relatively low, they can be seen in the daytime. But a good thing with the thermals is that, as far as I know, they are using the internal combustion engines, which are heating up pretty much while flying. Even though an electrical drone will heat up as well. So they're quite easy to find in the sky when using thermals, which is a good countermeasure for shooting them down.
I see. So if you want, let's return to FPVDronesUa. What do you want to talk to us about your future plans or your next steps or whatever?
So our next steps would be is supplying more FPVs to the front lines, and while we want to keep the steady supply of the drones, and while the drones are going to the front lines, we can focus on our other projects, for example, electronic warfare, or our like DIY Slavic, as we call it, just do-it-yourself reconnaissance drone. I mean, it's really far from perfection, but we understand the steps we should do to make it better, and all we need is just time and tests, constant tests.
Okay. It has been really a nice interview. I'm pretty sure that our audience is going to learn quite a lot. Any final words from this time? Because this is your home in order to explain whatever you want next times.
I mean, I just want to say a huge thank you to the FMON community again, and to all those people who support us, who donate to us, who like our posts, retweet our posts. Everything matters. Thank you guys very much. We are really shocked about how actually humane European people are, and that a lot of Europeans and Americans actually care about us and care about our lives, and this is very important. Thank you.
Okay, Eugene?
Yeah, I think there's nothing to add except a big thanks to everybody who helps us, and also a thank you to you for helping us spread.
Giving us a platform.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Eugene and Oleg, for giving us so much nice and precise information and a story to follow, because you are going to have a nice additional steps in order to protect your country. And let me say goodbye in Spanish for our community, because as you know, Spanish language is the language of 500 million people. And I hope that not only here in Spain, but also in all Latin America, people is going to hear your message. Entonces, gracias, perdón, a Eugene y Oleg por toda la información que nos han dado, por toda su historia y sobre todo por su ejemplo. Aquí abajo tenéis todo su medio principal de contacto, como han explicado antes, para que podáis hacerles preguntas o podáis sobre todo donar, tanto económicamente como piezas, y lo que podáis ayudarles para ayudar a proteger su país. Así que muchas gracias a todos por haber escuchado este programa. So, Eugene and Oleg, thank you very much again. I hope to see you again soon here in Por Tierra, Mar y Aire.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to speak to you.
Yeah.
You're an interviewer.
Thanks.